everyone, it's Paige. Welcome back to my channel. Today's topic, book talk. A few months ago, I made a video that I called Books TikTok Made Me Read, and since the time of me filming that video, I have read so many books because of Booktok. So today I figured we could sit down together and I could list 6 more books that TikTok has made me read and tell you what I thought about them. Most of them are popular because they contain some level of spice. So a lot of BookTokers recommend books based off of the level of spice. And I'll kind of do the same thing in this video because there is, I think, at least a little bit in each of the books that I'll talk about. And on that subject, if you would like to hear my thoughts about some of the more explicit BookTok recommendations, let me know below and I will make a video if that is what is desired. Okay, let's kick this off by talking about one of the most popular spicy books on TikTok, and that is A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett St. Clair. This is a fantasy romance retelling of Hades and Persephone. Personally, I am a huge fan of Hades and Persephone, so I went into this with pretty high hopes, and Booktok certainly hypes it up a lot. This follows Persephone, the goddess of spring, who moves to the city of New Athens. Persephone is struggling because despite being the goddess of spring, plants wither away at her touch. So instead of pursuing things that might have to do with her power, she ends up as a journalist. The hottest story in New Athens, at least to her, is the gambling den that the god of death runs, aka Hades. In trying to investigate this den of gambling that Hades has set up and runs, Persephone ends up in her own contract with Hades. I have read a few Hades and Persephone retellings. In fact, I did read Neon Gods, which I would be willing to talk more about in another video. And this one for me was just okay. I didn't hate it, I didn't love it, it was very in between for me. I would say on a spice scale, it ranks somewhere at like a 2 or a 3. I feel like there's a little bit too much misunderstanding that happens in this book. However, if you do have some really good Hades and Persephone retellings to recommend to me, please do in the comments. Like, please literally do, please. Alright, so moving on to another extremely popular series on Booktok. I read all 3 thus far of the Plated Prisoner series by Raven Kennedy. That starts with Guild, and this is a sort of King Midas retelling. This is, again, another fantasy romance. If I had to rank this on a spice scale, I would say this is probably at a 2. There really isn't a lot. So the protagonist of this series is a woman named Arin, and Arin lives in the kingdom or the province of Hybel. So she actually lives in the castle of Hybel. She lives there because when she was younger, she was rescued by King Midas off the streets. King Midas, of course, has the ability to touch anything and turn it to gold, and he does this to Arin. So King Midas sort of keeps her under lock and key, but for her own good, in quotation marks, of course. People flock to the kingdom of Hybel to see her because she is a living wonder. She is completely gold. Her entire body is gold touched. She is quite the hot commodity. Things change a lot for Arin after a foreign king comes to visit Hybel and strikes a bargain with King Midas. I think what's really important to note about this series is that the first book is very much a prologue, basically. It really sets up the world and the story, but what happens in the first book is not really reflective of the focus of the rest of the series, if that makes sense. I won't lie to you, a lot of parts in the first book and even in the following books are hard to get through. There are a lot of instances of emotional abuse and sexual assault, a lot of misogyny, just a lot of crap. That's as definitive as I can get. So if you can get through the cringy, horrible parts, maybe the rest of it makes up for it. Okay, next up is a book that I just finished, actually, and I started reading this book in the last reading vlog that I did. This book is The Atlas 6 by Olivia. Olivia Blake. Essentially, this is a modern fantasy that takes place in a world where the Library of Alexandria was never actually burned down. The general public doesn't know that it survived. However, the caretakers of the library were able to preserve it, so it is still functioning to present day. It is still there. 6 magical academians around the world are chosen to compete in this, secret competition to become caretakers of the Library of Alexandria. So I feel like, needless to say, we do have a multi-perspective fantasy novel here with 6 perspectives at least. You can kind of see my very positive reaction in my last reading vlog because I did really like how strong this book started, and I do like how magic was portrayed in this first book. I think that the world building was really cool. However, it does feel like not a ton happens in the book. You don't really move away from this singular setting. They are studying, they are experimenting, they are using the library's resources to advance their projects and things. It's definitely, I feel, a little bit slower paced. On the spice scale, there are a lot of romantic connections that are being made between these people behind the scenes almost. Still, definitely not more than like 1 pepper, maybe. Okay, so this next one was the last book that I read in 2021. I had never heard of this book before, but then after I saw that first recommendation, I started to see it kind of repetitively. So this is A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This is, wait for it, a historical fiction fantasy romance retelling of Brides of Dracula. This again falls under the category of LGBTQ and features very prominently a polyamorous relationship between, Dracula and his brides. This is written almost like a diary entry from the point of view of Dracula's first bride, Constanta. In the span of this pretty short novella, we see Constanta from the point at which she was rescued and turned into a vampire by Dracula, all through her very long life with Dracula and the rest of his brides. There are severe trigger warnings with this book, intense amounts of gaslighting, representation of a toxic relationship that includes emotional, verbal, and physical assault. This does actually fall also under the category of horror. I would say, and I think it's weird to give this book a spice level, but I guess on a scale, maybe 2.5, 3 peppers. The scenes themselves aren't explicit, but they happen pretty frequently. My favorite part about this book was how it was written. Like I said, it's in like a diary format. It's told in a way that obviously makes you sympathize with Constanta and Dracula's other brides. And it's also interesting seeing how time passes for these characters over this very short book, because like I said, they're together for hundreds of years. So they are living through these different eras and seeing how that influences their thinking and the way they move around because of different wars and famines and everything. It's very cool. It's just a very cool little novella. Like I said, if you're interested in Dracula retellings, for example, if you like Underworld, I think you would really like this book. However, like I said, keep in mind those trigger warnings. Alright, taking it back a little bit, last year I read all of the books in the Ravenhood series by Kate Stewart. Unlike the others, this is not a fantasy series. This is a dark contemporary romance. This follows a 19-year-old pretty recently graduated woman named Cecilia. Cecilia wants her inheritance from her father, who owns this huge company. So in order to do that, in order to earn her inheritance, at least according to her father, she is kind of forced to leave her mother and move to this new town in order to work at her estranged father's company for a year and earn herself some money, earn her inheritance later on, etc. Pretty much on her first day working at the plant, she meets her supervisor, Sean, and they kind of immediately fall into this sort of romance, and through knowing Sean, she meets the rest of his friends in this town. I think I expected something very basic out of this story. I didn't know really anything about it except for, you know, Booktok recommended it. So not knowing anything and sort of going in blind was awesome, and I feel like leaving it blind for you as well is for the best. I really liked this series. There are points where it feels like it takes itself too seriously, but most of the time, honestly, it is pretty serious and it comes across that way. There were many points in this series where I felt like my heart was breaking, and I really admire, honestly, Kate Stewart for being able to make me so attached to these characters that things that happened in this book actually did affect me. So I think if you are okay with trigger warnings of violence and knowing that this is a dark contemporary romance, I think that you will probably enjoy this. On a spice level, ooh, 4 peppers? That seems fair. I would say 3.5, 4 peppers. Okay, one last Booktok book, and I raved about this book in my top 10 books of 2021. If you haven't seen that video and you would like to, please click here. It was so good, and I'm glad that I decided to give it a shot. This is The Love Hypothesis by Hazelwood. This is a contemporary romance. That's it. Nothing really crazy about how to categorize this book. It's just a contemporary romance. This follows Olive, who is a student in a PhD program. She is working on a science-y project. With her in this grad program is her best friend, who is very interested in a guy that Olive went on a date with. She tries to convince her friend that she is not interested in him anymore, and in order to solidify her point, Olive, in front of her best friend, kisses the first man that she sees, which happens to be Dr. Carlson. Adam Carlson is one of the professors at the university that Olive is in a PhD program in. After this kiss, the two of them, having the mutual desire to fake a relationship, end up in a fake relationship together. This is a very, very common trope in contemporary romance, the fake relationship trope, but I definitely feel like this book does it differently, and it does it well. Love that we have a book that features women in STEM. Love that we have a setting that's in academia, because I feel familiar with that setting to a degree, and I just like that setting. Love the protagonist in this book, and I love the love interest. It's a very strong contemporary romance. It's probably one of my favorites. I would say give this a shot. I feel like you can't go wrong, honestly. But anyway, those were my 6 books. Yes, I know some of them were series, but I just consider it 6 books. Currently, I am hoping to start Furyborn by Clair Legrand. This is all over Booktok, and I hope that I can read it and enjoy it as much as Booktokers have. Apart from like a select few of like friends that I have that have given me book recommendations that aren't from TikTok, pretty much all of the books that I read now are because of Booktok. Like I said, if you are interested in hearing my thoughts about some of the more explicit Booktok recommendations, possibly like Ice Planet Barbarians, let me know below and I will cook up a video to give you my thoughts on those as well. If you liked this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Goodreads. You can also join my Discord channel called Paiging Through Club, where we read a book monthly and we talk about games and books pretty much every week. I hope you guys are having just a fabulous week, and I will see you back here very, very soon. Bye!